time for the demo. So let's wander back over to the sewing studio. Today I'll be on the Pfaff Creative 4.5. I'm going to highlight a little bit some of the notions that I am using today. The first is the 505 spray. This is what I'm using to baste my quilt together. So I've already pre-sprayed my back right here. It's sticky and it's waiting for me to finish my sewing. I will probably be using my by Annie stiletto just to help me get a couple of tricky pieces fed through my machine. It's like an extra finger that can get really close to my presser foot where my own finger can't go. Got mine over there. And I will be using my Clover Wonder Clips today to clip my pieces together because it's too thick for pins. Okay, so last week we did one block. I've got 4 done, so I can show you. I just sewed 2 blocks together, and I know there's some YouTube videos out there that are going to say take a 1/4 inch seam. I found that too bulky, so I actually took more like it's almost a 1/2 inch seam. And what I did, I just left my presser foot in the center and used my regular presser foot. So my needle, my needle is in the center, my regular presser foot is on, and I'm going to use the width between the needle and the edge of my presser foot to sew these together. And that is about, it's about a 1/2 inch. Okay, so I pressed my seams open because otherwise it's too bulky to press to one side. So I have my other 2 here that I did last night, literally last night, and now I just have to line them up. So I'm going to pay close attention and get that center seam lined up as perfectly as I can. Bring my little basket of Wonder Clips over and clip. And I'm going to clip in a couple places just because I normally am a pinner. And since this is too bulky, I want to keep it clipped. So you can see I'm just clipping it together in about 5 places is what I will do, just because I want to do this. Now, a little hint, when you go to trim your blocks, don't trim them before you're all done sewing. And then you want to see, measure your blocks and see which one is your smallest, and then you're going to trim all of your blocks to that size. So while I started out with a 10-inch square, these ended up being 9.5 inches because I did have some shrinkage with some of these stitches. They pulled in everything like I said they might last week. So keep that in mind. Okay, now we're going to sew this seam. And once again, wake up my machine, make sure I'm right where I need to be. I am going to, and I'm probably going to anchor my seam. Slow my machine down just a little bit. I am going to anchor, and when I first start sewing, I do like holding this needle thread to begin with. And I'm going to reverse it back and take that out, and now it's time to sew. And this is somewhere you would like to have a walking foot if you don't have a Pfaff with the IDT, which is this black thing right here. You do want to have a walking foot to help feed this fabric through, just because it is such a thick fabric. Now this is where I'm going to use my stiletto because I want to make sure that this comes under. I took out my clip, and I just want to keep that seam flat, so that's why I use that stiletto right there. It's not that it's too thick for the machine. The machine's taking it beautifully. You can see that. No problem. Sewing away, sewing away, sewing away. And done. And now for the scissor. I love the automatic scissor. Okay, my seam is sewn. Now I'm going to come to the iron And I forgot to turn it on, so we're going to tell it that it's on. And if you remember last week I told you to use the In-Touch batting, and this is not the In-Touch batting. So there is a polyester scrim on this batting which will melt when I touch it with the iron. So I am not going to touch my iron to these batting pieces. If I had thought about it, I would have brought my Teflon pressing sheet, and then I would not have worried about it, but I didn't do that today. So, all right, I'm just gonna, this iron heats up pretty quick. I'm just gonna press the seam kind of to one side real quick. I have my wool mat on my table today too. However, just a hint, be careful when using your wool mat on wood surfaces and a steam iron, because the wool does allow the steam to go through. Okay, now I'm going to open this back up, and again I'm going to press this seam open. And this can be a little fiddly because some of your pieces might not want to come. You see right here, this one kind of wants to lean over. I grabbed it and then I said no, I need to show that it might want to go not the way I want it. And I'm just using the tip of the iron to come along and press this open. And I'm going to be extra forceful right here on this bulky seam right here. Move this down. Try not to press it going the other way with my iron too. Keep it open with my fingers ahead of time to get that open. Now I'm going to flip this back over, and I'm going to press it from the right side because I want this seam nice and flat. And I'll probably keep my hand, take my hand underneath to make sure that I have it open. And the reason I like my wool mat is it keeps the heat in and actually will help keep that pressing flat. Okay, this bulky seam right here, that's the tricky part because these opposite seams also want to close in, so I want to make sure I get that good and flat. And I felt something funny under there, so yep, we're good. Okay, ta-da, a little mini square quilt, perfect for a doll, and you see the seams are now open. So now I'm going to come over and I'm going to put my background face down. Sorry, I'm stepping on the cord. Right side down, and then I'm going to kind of center my quilt top, and then from the center I'm going to push out. Now, if you don't tolerate basting sprays, and I know there are people out there who do not, you will want to tape your background, or your backing to a hard surface, and then put your top down, and then you're going to want to pin. And the rule of thumb is that you pin about a fist distance. So I'd have a pin here and here. I'd move it here and here. So you use your fist to mark where your pins are going to hold your quilt in place. And then when you go to quilt, when you come to a pin, you remove the pin. All right, so I'm feeling pretty good about this. I'm going to flip it over just to make sure that I'm okay on the back and that I don't have any funky wrinkles. Almost forgot to do that. That would be a sad thing. All right. Now, I'm going to change my presser foot because I am going to stitch not quite in the ditch. I really like this narrow edge foot for the Pfaff. If you have a stitch in the ditch, which Pfaff does too, but I like the narrow edge foot because I have a wide opening here. Most stitch in the ditch are just a single needle position. I have space in here that I can move my needle left or right. And I have the toe so I can keep it on my seam. Okay, so I will just do a little bit. I'm not going to do a whole lot on this, but just so you can see today. My chair's rolled away. All right, so I'm going to keep a straight stitch. I have the toe on my seam. Because we pressed our seams open, I need to move my needle position so it's just slightly off that seam. So I'm going to move it, let's see, how many clicks am I going to go? Right there. I'm going to go right there. Hold on, I want to pull my needle thread to the underneath side of my presser foot. This presser foot does not have a way to slide the thread through, but I do want that thread under my presser foot. Okay, so now I am ready to sew. Where's my foot control? Toes in the seam, that's going to keep me straight, and I'm just going to sew just barely off. And this will be quilting, and I can go a little faster. It's just tricky because I'm at a funny angle so Mr. Cameraman can get what I'm doing. And we'll just sew to the center seam here so you can see, and then I'll show you what we did. Take your time. This is not a race. Anytime you do quilting, just relax and have some fun with it. This is the easiest form of quilting, the stitching in the ditch. Just because it's like what it is. Now normally I wouldn't do that because you're going to want to tie that off, but I just want to show you what that quilting is going to look like. It's going to come down this side. I'd also move my needle to do it exactly the same side going on the other side of the block, and then you're all quilted together so it will look like that on the back. And you're done. And you have a doll blanket, or you can make a big one for your picnic quilt or your car emergency quilt using scraps and just having fun and being creative. I hope that's given you some fun ideas. I'll show you that again one more time. I hope you've got some fun ideas from this video. I hope you have a good week, and I will see you next week with another fun idea. I am really excited about it. So, yay! All right, happy 4th of July. Bye-bye.